I think I'm entitled.
You want answers!
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work. When you go to church. When you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For the first time in history, foreign policy has become global. Communications are instantaneous, and there exist problems which are genuinely not national, like environment, nuclear proliferation, and similar issues. So in this sense, we are living in a new world, and a new world order will emerge. The only question is whether it will arise out of intellectual and moral insight, and by design, or whether it will be forced on mankind by a series of catastrophes. That's the challenge of our period. And it makes it, to my mind, one of the most exciting periods in which anybody can live.
The digital identity is not just a passport that you will have on your iPhone in a digital form. It entails just about everything the government would like to know about you. The best way to get to a modern person's heart is to say that it's convenient for them. So yes, you won't have to carry all your different papers and your passports, but the downside of it is, and I hope that people will start to see this, that the government can shut you down. So you know, if you want to buy a burger, red screen, no Mark, not for you. That flight, not for you. Oh, but you can just buy it if you have enough money, right? So they're being very open and honest to what their goal is here. So we should take their words seriously and say, hell no. I would say we should cancel these communists immediately and say, get the hell out of my private life. I'm not having you track me and decide what I eat and where I go.
That is why I believe we must push forward the principle of pseudonymity as the functioning element of social media, and force all these platforms to link every user account to an European digital identity wallet. This way, citizens could use nicknames if they want, but in the case of a crime, public authorities would be able to connect those nicknames to real people and hold them responsible. Because accountability is not an obstacle to freedom of speech. It is an essential complement to it.
And finally, it takes resilience. As technology evolves, we need to build up societal immunity around information manipulation. Because research has shown that pre-bunking is much more successful than debunking. Pre-bunking is basically the opposite of debunking. In short, prevention is preferable to cure. Perhaps if you think of information manipulation as a virus, instead of treating an infection once it has taken hold, that is debunking. It is much better to vaccinate so that the body is inoculated. Pre-bunking is the same approach. Because disinformation relies on people passing it on to others. It is essential that people know what malign information's influence is and what the techniques are that are behind it. And as the knowledge goes up, our chances of being influenced goes down. And that builds up the society resilience that we will need.
And yet, we are allowing people to roam freely on social networks without linking their profiles to a real identity. This paving the way for misinformation, hate speech, and cyber harassment, because it is facilitating the use of bots, and it is allowing people to act without being held accountable for their actions. Such an anomaly cannot continue. In a democracy, citizens have the right to privacy, not to anonymity or impunity, because with those two, social coexistence would be impossible.
This is an extraordinary story. So he was born in a place called the Judengasse, which was a Jewish ghetto, basically. And it was the house that he lived in when he eventually had 13 children was only 14 feet wide. And he lived there with his very, very overpowering and dominant and an incredibly brilliant wife who was called Guttel. He was determined to get out of this ghetto. At night time, the ghetto was closed. You weren't allowed to leave. The street was so narrow that no sunlight could penetrate. There was no plumbing, there was no sewage, there was nothing. So everything you can imagine happened in this street. And unsurprisingly, he wanted to get out of there. And he started a small coin business, and that did reasonably well. But actually, and this is where it ties into legacy, his great strength was to send his 5 sons to the capitals of Europe at that time. And what they did is they set up, in effect, the first international banking system. So whereas everyone used to be in separate different countries or separate cities until then, these 5 boys communicated with each other, sometimes by pigeon, and they wrote to each other in Judendeutsche, which was a kind of Yiddish German vernacular. And that is why they were so successful. And this absolute belief in togetherness, you've got to stand together, you've got to work together, you've got to work across borders, you've got to work with rules. And by 1789, when the last one went, to 1815, so a very, very short period of time, it was said that no government or king would consider going to war without the Rothschilds supporting them, because that was how incredibly influential and powerful they had become.
The negative impact of population growth on all of our planetary ecosystems is becoming appallingly evident. The rapid growing exploitation of the world's supply of energy and water is a matter of deep concern, and the toxic byproducts of widespread industrialization have increased atmospheric pollution to dangerous levels. Unless nations will agree to work together to tackle these cross-border challenges posed by population growth, overconsumption of resources, and environmental degradation, the prospects for a decent life on our planet will be threatened. The recent UN meeting in Cairo is appropriately focused on one of these key issues, population growth. But the controversies which have erupted at the conference illustrate the problem of coming to grips with issues that are deeply divisive and which have a profound moral dimension. The United Nations can and should play an essential role in helping the world find a satisfactory way of stabilizing world population and stimulating economic development in a manner that is sensitive to religious and moral considerations. Economic growth is, of course, an inevitable corollary of a growing population and is essential to improved standards of living. But without careful coordination, unrestrained economic growth poses further threats to our environment. This was a major subject of discussion at the conference in Rio de Janeiro on the environment 2 years ago. The focus then was on sustainable growth and global development. It was pointed out at the conference that growth is most efficiently managed by the private sector, but regulation of the process by national governments and international bodies is also needed. And once again, the United Nations should certainly be among the catalysts and coordinators of this process.